Hello and welcome to another Analysing Avatar. This week we're taking a look at an episode titled The Headband, or as it's probably known in some weird document somewhere, Headband. They dropped the.
I think Awakening is a better title, to be fair.
You think Awakening is better than The Awakening?
Yeah, but anyway, that was last week, Dan. Let's talk about this week.
Let's not be stuck in the past. Let's not do what we did last week, Chris, and become one of the most self-indulgent podcasts ever. Let's instead talk about the show we're supposed to be reviewing.
First one back, it's fine. Don't worry about it, Dan. Don't worry your pretty little head about it.
I'll try not to. It is a pretty little head, isn't it?
Oh, it's gorgeous.
And it begins. No, right, straight into it. It's Avatar. We're doing the Headband. It's the episode. You guys know it. It's the one that's basically it's Footloose. It's Footloose. It's the Avatar adaptation of the movie Footloose. Aang brings dancing to a town that have outlawed it, and Zuko. We find out Iroh's fate, and Zuko potentially sent some sort of assassin after Aang. That's the plot. That's what happens. Let's get into it. I'm not messing about, Chris. We too much. Too much fluff next week. Too much potatoes. Not enough meat. Let's get straight to the meat.
All right, go.
What'd you think?
I liked it. Next question.
Me too. All right, cool. You can get us on YouTube.com/.
Is that really the Footloose? The town's outlawed dancing.
Yeah. And Kevin Bacon comes to save them and bring dancing.
Oh wow! I've never seen it.
You should see Footloose. Footloose is great.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good. It's a good plot. Like, I like the sound of it. I've seen Dirty Dancing. But,
yeah. Dirty Dancing's also pretty good. I prefer Footloose, but
I guess
to be fair, I've seen neither of those movies in recent years. It's been a long time since I've seen any of those movies from that era.
I guess I assumed they had the same plot. I saw Dirty Dancing outside. It projected onto a castle in Wales with a bunch of drunk women, and I never want to see it again because that's the perfect way to see it. Anyway, Dan. I
tell you what. You know what Dirty Dancing's missing?
What?
John Lithgow. So John Lithgow is like he's like a priest. He's like the local priest, and he's the one that instituted the ban on dancing. He's like the villain of Footloose.
Oh.
And
right.
Just John Lithgow.
Does he get redeemed in the end?
Oh, we're not going to spoil Footloose. I also don't quite remember what happens to his character, to be honest with you. But he's the one that's wiggling his finger and going, "No dancing in this town, not on God's watch."
Right.
Kevin Bacon is basically the Aang of that
story.
Moving
on. Back to the meat, Dan. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's get right into it.
Yeah.
I watch this like, fucking hell, like this show influences so much, doesn't it? Because, the Star Wars cartoons, man. Like, let's see the other side of the Stormtroopers. And this presumably came first.
Yes.
What a fascinating little look at fleshing out the Fire Nation and going, look, they're this way because they're trained and raised to be this way. It's a great idea. Yeah. It's beautifully executed. We got some Aang and Katara flirting.
Yep.
Oh, love it. What an episode.
Yeah, it's a corker, isn't it? It's another one of those episodes that, like, on the surface, you'd be forgiven for coming out of this one going, well, that was just a fun little jaunt of an episode. Didn't have a huge amount of, like, impact on anything. And I guess, strictly speaking, narratively, that might be true. Like, with the exception of the Zuko sending out the assassin. From a plot perspective, very little of this episode has plot ramifications elsewhere. But I think it adds a great deal of like context for all sorts of stuff. It shows the sort of oppression that the Fire Nation, that the people in the Fire Nation are under. It also, I think, demonstrates like the amount of propaganda they're receiving. Like many countries under sort of like dictators and under like tight political regimes throughout history and to present, the information that they're taught in schools is factually inaccurate, and it's because it's depicting their country in a certain way, sort of indoctrinating them early. The idea that the Fire Nation fought the air nomad armies, and Aang was just like, well, no, they ambushed them. There was The Air Nomads had no formal military. He knows differently, but of course that's not what these kids are being taught. It really does do an awful lot for the world building, while also being like this fun kind of rompy homage to Footloose that's also kind of silly and got loads of great jokes in it. And even just like quite a small story of the week thing about this, Aang in his own small way helping this one tiny town, It's very Doctor Who in that often in Doctor Who, there's people that are like, well, we're not important, this isn't important. He's like, well, the small things are just as important as the big things. I can save the universe. By the way, take your shot. This week's Doctor Who reference. Give us half an hour. We'll have mentioned Harry Potter. It's kind of like, from Aang's perspective, he could be focused on the wider world, taking down the Fire Lord, the big goal. But while he's on his journey, why not do a few small nice things in whatever way he can for the rest of the community too? I think that's lovely.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm a little bit, hopefully you were being evasive, but I was kind of hoping this would come back narratively. Maybe later on we'd see in some ways the younger people rebelling. Aang had left a mark, sort of thing. But that implies that won't happen. But that's fine. That's cool. I completely agree. I think it's. I'm
not going to respond to that point. Just on to help create doubt.
Yeah. That, even that phrase, to help create doubt, which you shouldn't have. That
could be going either way, mate.
I think it emphasizing that and kind of giving us that depth and understanding of the Fire Nation.
Yes.
Is brilliant. Is such a, and because you can see it in the older kids. I assume he's older. The girl he sort of connects with, her boyfriend, is the sort of, he is the telltale. Because he's been in the system longer, and it's right. Beaten that kind of stuff out of him. Like, there's a lot of layers to the episode. Yeah. As well as being a fun romp, like as you've sort of indicated, like the whole sort of stay flaming and Flavio, and instead of that's cool, that's flaming. Like, that's flaming made me laugh
Flavio,
so
my
much.
fellow Hotman. Stay flaming. Greetings, my good Hotman.
So good.
So at the end of the last episode, when I said that this is the episode that is quoted the most, that is what I'm referring to. Nadia and I, even prior to Nadia watching it, I told her about this episode and the, Flavio, my fellow Hotman, and all that stuff. And I think that's something we have said to say. Those are phrases that have been used around our house. Is that Nadia echo at the door? She's sneaking. No, she's leaving. Surely, okay. She's not. I thought she was going to come in there and add to that. So it's something we've quoted a lot in our time because it's quite fun, and it also it can be used in so many different contexts.
Soccer at the end as well. Are you taking off that beard? Nope, it is stuck to my face. I thought that was great.
Yeah. I am a fan of Secret Rivers. Is another great one. I also enjoy Mr. and Mrs. Fire, Sapphire Fire.
I like the fact that to help with the disguise, they appear to make Katara pregnant.
Yep, they do. I don't know why, but they do.
Which to be fair,
and they do this. It's like stereotypical things that parents do in those meetings. That doesn't sound like my Kuzan.
Well, what I like about it is it could be part of a clever plan, because the implication is, look, if we look young to you, we had Aang. We're just having kids young, like we're young parents. We're not older parents, and maybe her being pregnant implies that in some way. I don't know. It's just very good. It's a weird one because I suddenly feel like, we're like, it's all about the meat, and then we're like, yeah, it's really good, guys. But when an episode like this is when it's like a great story of the week episode, it's hard to delve. But there is one element where we can delve down. So let's delve. Let's get to some more meat. Iroh, even just visually, the color palette used in that, and how gaunt he looks, and how they literally drained the colour and warmth from Iroh. It's very effective, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really upsetting. It's interesting because I was wondering if you were going to question last week where Iroh was. And I sort of like, I nearly used it as like a teaser for this week. Like, we'll find out what Iroh's fate.
The only reason I was going to question it is because he's included in he was included in the recap and then not seen, which I thought was weird. But it seemed unfair to judge the episode on like the recap. So,
and it might have been that he was included in the recap because he says something that was relevant to that episode.
Yeah, which I think he did. He talked about, but basically, I think it was to demonstrate that Zuko has gone completely off the rails.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it was used for other reasons than reminding you of his character's situation. But yeah, finding out where Iroh was this episode was a big part of that. I remember more vividly than anything else when I first watched through this series. I just remember, as you pointed out, that how upsetting it was to see this very kind, warm-hearted character who'd been betrayed by a person he trusted, like, just in such dire straits. Like, it's upsetting to see Iroh in the situation he's in. You know, he went from happily running his little tea shop in the middle of the one of the biggest cities in the Earth Kingdom to like this absolute hovel they've got him in. You know, with, by the way, the dumbest guards ever. Like, you there? Show yourself. Name yourself. The guy just turns around and walks away. Okay, I guess I'm going to forget this happened. What? Like...
Never mind.
Never mind, you're fine. You walk the other way now. It's not at all suspicious. Like, what? Who are these guards? Is this where they send the shittest Fire Academy recruits? Is this where where Kuzon would have ended up if he'd have kept playing up? Like, no, he's one of the shit ones. We'll send him to the fucking weird prison tower, and he could just be shit there. I don't know. Yeah, just incompetence. I also think that with that whole Iroh plot, one of the things that struck me was Zuko is not quite the master tactician his sister is he? Showing up, making himself visible to a guard instead of trying to sneak in and just being like, "Don't tell anyone," is a dumb plan, top to bottom. And then he gives it away straight away when Azula asks him. Like, she tricks him so easily.
And then he keeps going back as well. Like, I thought it was really effective when she's like, "Don't do that, dum dum." And like the next time we see him, he's just going back again.
Yeah, because she's exactly right. Regardless of what his feelings are for his uncle, and practically in his current situation, she's right to say, "Hey, idiot! If they see you or find out you're doing that, they're going to become suspicious you're conspiring with essentially someone we've now labelled a traitor. Like, don't do that." Like, I mean, what Azula's motives aside, she's correct, and it's exactly why she's the master tactician that we talked about last week, and why she's such an effective villain, and why he's a fucking moron that's blundering about, bumping into walls, not able to tie his own shoelaces. Like, get your shit together, Zuko, because mate, this ain't it. The Iroh of it all is tragic, and I think the most tragic part is the not saying anything, the not turning around. The character that always had advice, always had a thought to spare for Zuko and help Zuko and give Zuko advice. When Zuko directly says, "I need your help, I need some advice," the fact he just doesn't say a word is so powerful. And it's only so powerful because we know Iroh so well. But it's a masterful thing they've done where they've built on what we know about the character and used it to make this incredible moment that like communicates so much without communicating anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. And like the moment where like the single tear falls and stuff, and you know how hard it will be for him to be ignoring him, but that's how betrayed he feels. Yeah. No, it's beautiful stuff.
And there's also a part of you that wonders, like, but he's so wise. Is he even actually fed up with Zuko, or does he know that Zuko needs to figure this out on his own? Like, because that's the thing with Iroh. You never know. Is he genuinely mad at Zuko for betraying him, or does he just think that Zuko's going to learn his lesson best if left to it? Because Zuko, even in this episode, says to him, "I've come back. I've gotten all that I thought I ever wanted, and and it's not been how I wanted at all. It's not been what I expected it to be. I've not gotten out of it what I thought I was going to get out of it." And that makes that kind of makes me wonder is this Iroh playing 4D chess and sort of going, well, he's learning on his own that the thing he thought he wanted isn't the thing he wants. If I interfere now, he might not finish learning this lesson.
Yeah, because you kind of think if he's not doing that, then he's truly given up on Zuko, right. which doesn't feel right for the character.
You know, you just did. I have to go back to the tape, but you did the voice, but you went back to Zuko.
I thought I said Zuko, didn't I?
Oh, did you? Okay. I must admit, like, yeah, I got you on low, so you don't like double up through my headphones. So maybe I misheard. But to me, it sounded like you went Zuko. So you did the voice, but you still named it wrong.
No, I meant if it sounded like that, what I was trying to say was Zuko.
I see.
So I don't like to think of him giving up on him, but equally, if he has, that's also powerful. So I'm down for that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is he's a character that's so complex that like you buy a version of events where, you buy a version of events where. Sorry, I just looked through the window. Nadia's out in our car park taking the cardboard out to the recycling, and it all just blew out of her hands. It was like she had 2 pizza boxes and then a lot of small...
to laugh at.
I know it's horrible to laugh, but it was like something out of a shit sitcom. Because she was holding the 2 pizza boxes and then a few smaller boxes on top of that, like a little box that we had cat food in. I don't know, a few other little bits. And the wind just took them all. It's bad.
Can she see that you've been laughing? Does she?
No. But she'll hear later when I play her this clip.
Well, I'm on your side, Nadia. I think he should.
Who can you laugh at?
I think he should rush out and help, but
she's already sorted it, mate. She's on it. She was like lightning.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
No,
I bet she didn't even look
I'll give her a hug later. I'll be like, I'm sorry.
Took it in her stride.
She did take it in her stride. She might not have taken it in her stride quite as well if she'd seen me leering through the window with a giant smile laughing at her, but hey-ho.
I think if I lived with you or lived near you, I'd just assume you were always leering. Anyway, the meat, Dan. The meat. It's fantastic. Yeah, so I take it you, like me, don't like to think of him completely giving up on him.
Yeah, it's difficult. That's why I think as well, and again, it's a testament to how well written the character is, that you're always looking for that sort of like extra layer. You're always going, oh, maybe it's a double bluff, But you're right, either one has powerful implications, right? You've either got a situation where Iroh is still, even in this situation, doing what he thinks is best for his nephew, looking after Zuko, or there's the other version of the events where he's just defeated. He's given up. He's done with Zuko. He's at the end of his tether. And the idea of someone as kind and patient as Iroh being that at the end of his tether is equally exciting as a story plot prospect. I like you. I'm looking for explanations because you just don't want to think of the kindly man being this low. But at the same time, story-wise, that's a powerful thought. So yeah, there's a lot going on with it. I think Iroh is certainly one of the most powerful parts of this episode, because as much as I love the world building, the extra information we get about the Fire Nation and the indoctrination of that and all that stuff, for me, on as fun as it is to run around the house yelling "Flamio, my fellow Hotman," for me, the most powerful thing that comes from this episode is Iroh's situation, for sure.
Mm.
And you're right, the visuals sell it so well. It's awful.
Yeah, because like I say, they literally drain the warmth out of him.
It's how you'd animate. Oh, I've done it, Chris. I've completed it. It's how you'd animate Azkaban if you were animating Azkaban. Honestly, it feels like we're doing it on purpose now. It just comes to me. So there you go. Take your second shot of the week. We've hit on Doctor Who and Harry Potter.
No, I completely agree. What do you think of all the Aang Katara stuff, Dan?
Well, I mean, that was going to be my question for you because one, I just spoke quite a lot, but two, I mean, you love yourself a good romance plot. A lot of your favorite shows, you connect to them so strongly because of the romance plot. Like The Office, there you go. There's the third one, The Office. Your love of The Office really is exemplified by your love of Jim and Pam. So, you love a love story. We're sort of,
I do.
We're pretty clearly, that they're still chipping away at Aang Katara. Slowly but surely, there are more and more moments those two are getting together. This episode has, for those who don't remember, Aang kind of is dancing with one of the girls from the school, and I think Sokka says, "Oh, they look good together." And she's like, "Yeah, if you like that sort of thing." She looks a bit jealous, and then Aang singles out Katara to dance with, and he holds his hand down. It's like a proper Aladdin moment, do you trust me, sort of thing. Then they dance together, and at the end she blushes, and it's all very sweet and very child friendly. But I'm very curious, Chris, as to how you felt.
I think they've done a lot of clever things with Aang and Katara. I think. Because he has got good chemistry with that girl, the Fire Nation girl, and but it's sort of that what I really like about Jim and Pam. What I think, regardless of season 9 where they had a bit of tension, fundamentally, Jim and Pam never broke up. They weren't Jess and Nick from New Girl. They weren't Ross and Rachel from Friends. It was never a. They were.
Yeah, it wasn't a will they won't they. It was a they will.
Yeah. It was a they will, and here you go, and that felt like giving the fans what they wanted. And I think there's a moment where you think, oh, is this girl gonna be a character? Is this gonna be a thing? And then when he dances with her and the chemistry continues, you're like, oh, and then he comes over and he's like, take my hand. And it's just like, no, Aang and Katara forever. So I think that was very clever. They also, for a show that now, because I didn't say it last week, but part of my thing when it became a couple of weeks had gone by is I'm again like, there's a fucking deadline here, people. Like we're on a tight deadline. What are we doing? So the show can't jump that far ahead. So doing things like having Aang blush when Katara looks beautiful in a new costume and stuff, and basically kind of with Aang's hair, he's still got hair in this episode, doesn't he? I just realised I didn't really pay attention.
Yeah, he's still got hair. He has hair as part of his disguise, but he's got the headband to block the front of the arrow, which is obviously on his forehead.
Yeah. So doing things like dressing Aang more maturely, dressing Katara more maturely, giving Aang hair, etc., which just makes him feel, because he feels he looks older because he looks different. That's sometimes how TV shows, especially animations, do aging. If the character looks different, that inherently makes them look older. It's not like people look older with hair, but the fact that it's a kind of man's haircut he suddenly has, not the previous haircut which we so associated with him being more of a child. They're in a limited time where you can't, time jump 3 years, by maturing them up by, how they look is a very clever way of, right, well, they were these two kids and now they're growing together and potentially, feeling more adult feelings towards each other. It's all very cleverly done.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's yeah, because I guess previously it was all very school age. It was like, pulling pigtails sort of romance, and it does feel like they're maturing the romance as the characters are maturing. And I do agree, it's a weird trick, isn't it? Giving them different outfits does make them seem more mature. The outfits in general, by the way, I will say I really like the choices for their Fire Nation sort of disguises. I very much love the detail of Toph kicking out the bottom of the shoe, so she could have the appearance of having been wearing shoes, but obviously isn't, at least at the feet.
Yeah,
so
it really it made me laugh when the Earthbender did that.
Why do you do this to me, Chris?
It was even worse because you can't see this, but I said it and then just took a big old swig of tea.
Oh no, I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. I heard the gulp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, my PG Tips label has been in my cup of tea this entire time.
That's fucking karma, mate.
Do you reckon that's not like leaked in colouring into the tea, which is going to be dangerous?
No. Even if it had, it would be so, such a minimal amount. It wouldn't be. You'd be talking 1 part in a million. Like it'd be nothing. You wouldn't even notice. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for. Even though I upset you, thank you for reassuring me about that. Yeah. I appreciate that.
That's okay. I'm not a monster. But I hope you choke and die. So Toph did break the things out from her thing, which, by the way, and I just make a point that they only show her doing that on one of them, and never the second one. So I must admit, spending the episode wondering if she's done that to both the shoes or not. I assume so, but they only show her doing one of them.
Yeah, it's a good point.
A few things that I noticed. I was quite annoyed actually because, like, sometimes you watch these episodes with a critical eye and you spot things you've never spotted before, little details, and you're really pleased with yourself. And then you turn on, you take a second to properly. I'd glanced through the trivia for this episode previously, but I hadn't read through the trivia. So I go to the trivia, and the thing I'd noticed was there. And I was like,
"Oh man,
disappointing."
What was the thing you noticed, Dan?
So in the shot in the school when Aang is stood when he first comes into the school, into the class, and he's at the front, they do a shot where you can see over the door how the symbol of the school is supposed to look, and it's a triangle pointing upward. But when Aang turned his belt with that symbol on it into a headband, he had it pointing downward in a triangle to sort of reflect his arrow.
Oh, yeah. That's nice.
And I was like, spotted that and went, that's lovely. So he's wearing the school symbol upside down all episode. No one says anything, but that's fine. But yeah, it's a nice little nod. And then it's in the trivia. And I was like, that's disappointing. Sad about
that. But it doesn't take away that you noticed it, Dan, just because someone else noticed it.
I know.
You're fine, man. You're fine. Did you think almost, though, like, I don't feel this way, but do you think, because, my thing I stand by about Aang and Katara and how clever it is to sort of age them up and show maturity and, adult feelings developing in how they look and how they act, etc. Do you think it is slightly contrasted by a good portion of this episode being Aang getting joy from being a school kid?
It's contrasted by that. It's not hurt by that, but that is the counterpoint, isn't it? I think what's great about this episode is, as well, one of the other little things it's doing is it is reminding you that Aang is a child, because Aang has been thrust into this, like a lot of these great stories. Like we talked a lot about Steven Universe, about what was so great about it was, the amount. Yeah, take a shot. That's the other show. If there was a third show, we were likely to. Once we've hit Doctor Who and Harry Potter, the third shot should definitely be Steven Universe. I think this is highly relevant in this case because one of the things I talked about. Sorry, I just banged the desk with my knee as I repositioned. I am sorry. That might have been quite loud on the mic. The thing we constantly went back to with Steven Universe was how heartbreaking it was that this child had all this responsibility thrust on him, with Steven, and that was actually like they do episodes where they'd show you how young he was or remind you how young he was because they'd have to because he was dealing with so much responsibility. It's easy to forget the character's sort of actual age. And what I love about this episode is not only is it doing that, which is the sort of surface thing of, hey, remember, he's young enough to be in school. This is a child we've entrusted the world to because of the circumstances that have occurred around him. But then you go, oh yeah, he kind of just wants to be a child. It's not even... Because with Steven, you always kind of go like, well, he's always wanted to be a crystal gem. He's always wanted to save the world. He's always wanted to do right? He's always wanted that for himself. But that's not true of Aang. Aang did not choose this. In fact, he ran away from this responsibility, which is extremely relatable. Putting the whole world on your shoulders. But I just want to have fun and be a kid. That's so much more tragic than Steven, who is the noblest person who just took that responsibility in his stride and even wanted to get ahead of himself. When the other crystal gems were trying to slow him down, be like, hey, back up. Like, you can't come on all the dangerous missions yet. You're still very young. You know, Stephen had magical gem destiny that he knew of, and he wanted to get out there and learn. And, you know, whereas, you know, Aang refused the call. That's what got them into this situation. So when you have episodes like this, you're not just going, hey, remember, he's school age? And me going, oh yeah, fuck, this is a child. I'm also going, oh, this is a child that just wants to be a child. Like, the excuses he makes to stay in the school throughout this episode because he's enjoying just being a child. Incredible. Like it's obvious nonsense. He's just like, oh, we can learn about the Fire Nation. Like, it's not going to help you. The Secret River thing was clearly just a bad excuse, you know, to like stick around.
It did.
And
that also it did lead to a great joke though, where Sokka goes, I do like secret rivers.
Yeah, it's a great gag. It's a really good gag. But what I think is interesting about this episode as well is it doesn't really. It would have been very easy to make that the point of this episode, to make that the resolve. Aang learning that he can't be a normal kid, he has to go off and have his responsibility. But actually, the result of this episode is he just helped one town, and that's enough sometimes, right? And that's lovely, and also a bit unexpected.
You've got to hope that some of those kids remember dancing, remember the feeling of dancing,
right?
Remember that, and carry that forward. And
he says that early in the episode. This is one of his actual stronger arguments for why they should stay in the town and throw the dance party for these kids, is because Aang says, like, well, you know, if we're going to change this nation, we've got to start with some of these people, let them know what freedom looks like. And again, in a small way, he's chipping away at what the Fire Nation have achieved, and that's a small way, yes, but important, absolutely. And I think, you know, reminding me of all that stuff in one plot that's cohesive and it's doing. How can you find one plot that tells me all of that about Aang and the world? It's like it just the selection of this storyline at all is genius, even before you execute it, because it manages to cover so much stuff, you know. And it is tragic to see how much joy Aang gets out of just wanting to be a regular kid again. It's throughout all of the fun of this episode, all of it is just tinged with sadness because it's just, he can't have this life. This can't be his life. It'll never be his life. That's brutally sad, you know. So it's just beautifully written, beautifully designed. Like an episode that, again, I think somebody would fairly be able to dismiss as being maybe inconsequential in the wider sense of the narrative. I think does a great deal to validate its existence, and is definitely one of the stronger episodes of this show, I think. And all of that stuff is exactly why.
And just going back to that joke, you know, I do like secret rivers. Again, I know I'm a slight broken record because I've made this point about this show before, but how modern does that feel? Do you know what I mean? As a line of dialogue and as a joke, the construction of that. The tone of it, you know, it's again we've used this example before. It's that new girl almost throwaway comedy. Like, it's not a, you know what I mean. It's not an overt studio sitcom line. It's a throwaway, blink and you'd miss it style of comedy, which feels incredibly modern.
Yeah, and here it was in an animated show from like 2005. Like before that style of sort of verbal, like back and forth humor sort of even became popular in regular sitcoms. You know, This show's humor is very like, oh wow. Sorry, I had a weird bit of feedback in my ear then from my headphones. I'm gonna take that headphone out for a second. Wow, that was very loud. Either I got too loud or something echoed somewhere. That wasn't good. I didn't enjoy that. I can't remember what I was saying now. That really blew my ear out. Don't know what just happened. Style of humour. This show was doing it like before other comedies of the era were doing it like regularly. Like they were the choice to do this style of comedy is very sophisticated, and I don't know if they did it by accident. You know, they were just putting things in it they found were funny, or if they made a very deliberate choice to sort of go. And I can assure you, there weren't many animated shows at this time, I don't think, using comedy the way this show was using comedy. I don't think. I feel like it started a little bit, and you might laugh at this suggestion, but I think a little bit that kind of comedy put into like mildly dramatic situations, like where it's like it's a serious thing they're talking about, but the characters are kind of being funny about it, like almost knowingly funny, which is I think what you're referring to when you refer to that sort of new girl style. I think that started with like Buffy, so it wasn't. This isn't the first example of it. But it is amazing to see that style of comedy in animated shows so much earlier than it was popularized, certainly in sitcoms. There were dramas on TV, like thanks to Buffy, doing it ahead of this. But yeah, it's very, very modern.
And not to sound like I'm putting it down in any way, but again, in a children's animation. And I'm not putting down the genre there. You just don't expect to hear New Girl style dialogue
Not
in
one for the
in
time,
a child's
anyway.
animation. No, but even now, that would still sort of, well, maybe not now, I suppose.
Yeah, because I mean,
like,
Adventure Time, Steven Universe, like we've moved. A lot of these shows have that kind of comedy now, like quite good modern sort of comedy where they've, that's they're not talking down to kids quite as often as they used to. I also think something like The Simpsons helps because I think just in the grand scheme of television, like The Simpsons kind of, I think brought like adult sitcom sensibilities to animation, where animation was previously very slapsticky. The idea of animated comedy could be, more verbal or more practical, more down to earth. Even like I think, without things like it's funny. TV is really very. People sometimes say about music, you can trace the lineage of a thing back. You go back through the music. This band were inspired by Nirvana. Well, Nirvana were inspired by the Pixies. The Pixies were inspired by this band, and then you go right back and you get to like the Beatles, and then you go even further back, and it's like it just goes on and on and on. You see DNA of all the things that come after it and before it in every piece of art, and that's very true. I think Avatar. One of the reasons it's as timeless as it is like it did borrow heavily from the things that were working in front of it, and it's continued to stay relevant by sort of like inspiring many of the things that have followed it. But it was, I think, for animation at the time, remembering what else was on television when this was airing, this does feel revolutionary, for sure.
That quote, I think I've said it before, always reminds me of a really interesting Ed Sheeran comment where he said people would moan at him because he didn't listen to U2, but he was like, but I am influenced by U2 because U2 have influenced Snow Patrol, and you can hear Snow Patrol in songs like Castle on the Hill. And he's like, so when people say that sounds like U2, to him, it sounds like Snow Patrol because that's his reference.
And that is just how culture and music evolve. And therefore, I think that's also true in storytelling,
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
What other kind of general notes have you got, Daniel?
Let's have a look. We talked about a lot of this stuff, I think. We covered that too. Dear Lord, we might have covered all of this. Oh, let's talk very briefly. There's a little reference to a Fire Lord Sozin when they talk about his...
Also assassin, just because people will be going, you've not really talked about the fucking assassin, guys, so we'll loop back to that as well.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. So Fire Lord Sozin was the Fire Lord before Fire Lord Ozai. We've had references to him before, but it's him that obviously started the war. They reference here very much his battle with the Air Nation army. I found that to be an interesting little tease for maybe what we might learn later. This is the second episode in a row that's maybe hinted at the history of the Fire Nation and how the Fire Nation started this war and why in the first place. Are you feeling like we're just going to continue getting hints, or do you think at some point we're actually going to get like the story?
Oh no, this show, I'm not saying we're going to get a flashback episode, but like Take a Swig, Harry Potter, where you have enough of the pieces to put the backstory together.
Right.
This show is too cleverly plotted to be giving us hints 2 episodes in a row that aren't going to go anywhere. So I'm not saying we're going to see a big flashback, but I think we're certainly going to have all the pieces we need for that.
Yeah, agreed. I really enjoyed a lot that they allowed Aang to march in place quietly. Sorry, for his love of the Fire Nation.
Yeah, my only thing with that is I thought we were going to see other people following suit, but I suppose then that's teasing the end too much, isn't it? It's more powerful. The end's more powerful to not do that. Animation-wise,
just made some notes that I thought particularly the dance party looked amazing. I thought the way they animated all the people dancing. I think it doesn't. It's not anywhere in the trivia, but this show is famous for having used real-world footage to animate the combat. So they had footage of there's a guy, I forget his name off the top of my head, but there's a guy that used to brought in, he's a martial arts expert, and he helped them develop all the fighting styles and stances used in the show. So he would do them on camera, and then they would animate off the video of him. I suspect, based on how the dancing looks in this, particularly the guy when Aang says they can freestyle, the guy that really goes for it, that feels like it was based on, like, they got a dancer in and filmed that dancer and said, or even maybe you got some, because obviously some of the dancing incorporates fighting stuff, especially when it comes to Aang and Katara, which is a really nice moment as well. I think a lot of it they animated off real world footage. I don't know that for certain, but it looks that way to me. And it's brilliant. It's so well done. Like the every single dance move they do is like feels really fluid and is just brought to life very beautifully, and it really helps sell what they're selling in this episode. An episode without a major action sequence.
It's no Zion in The Matrix Reloaded, but it is great. Yeah. Yes, because actually, I think I changed my mind on the action sequences in episode 1, because actually I think the fight, Aang trying to go through the water, counts. It's again that thing of there's no fight, but there is visual spectacle with the dancing. I mean, it's not a fight, but the choreography of Aang and Katara's dance is visually giving you the senses of and the feeling, of watching a fight scene.
Yeah. It feels actionful. It feels it feels
it's a spectacle.
Big and like exciting.
Yeah, definitely, and a great, a well animated dance. Obviously, Dan, at some point you and I are going to have to learn it and recreate it.
Obviously, for the finale. I will say as well, the music. Let's not take out of it. We don't talk about the music for the show often enough. It's always astounding, which is one of those things where it's just like it gets overlooked because it's just good always. It's very often not commented on, but particularly in this episode, that ding 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 ding, that music they're dancing to from the band that Aang names the Flamios.
Yes, and let's talk about the Flamios, Dan, because obviously they still learn music. We see the kids doing that.
Yes.
But I mean, the Flamios must be going back to their relevant, significant others, going, fucking hell, the gig we did tonight, it wasn't just everyone stood watching us. There were all these kids dancing. It was insane. And then their significant others are like, oh, wow, so the Flamios, that feels more appropriate for the Flamios. They're like, yeah, better than these corporate events, which we're doing all the time. That's every gig for them, is just people staring at them because there's no dancing. They must have been, why did we not cut to the Flamios absolutely loving life?
Well, I'm assuming that the Flamios are just the school band and Aang has named them.
Ah, right. I thought they were they were basically a band for hire.
That's a great idea, but I don't think that's what happened. Let's check. Let me just see. I'll bring it up. I've got it here. Here we are.
No, what you've said makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, it looks like it's school kids. So it's the school kids that were in the musical group that he was from the day, but they've turned up to do the music.
Oh, that makes sense.
And Aang has named them the Flamios. Yeah, it's school children on the instruments they were playing in the class.
Well, still, I bet they were loving it.
Oh yeah. I got to play music and people danced to it. Crazy. I also I just say I do love the principal of the school arriving, having had his tip, from that arsehole kid. And he's just like, it is a dancing party. Like,
yeah. I don't think we needed that.
No, we didn't. He could have just turned up in the thing. I think then, last thing we need to talk about very briefly before we get onto the cracking on through the triv and the question. Zuko set an assassin after Aang. Looks pretty mean. Weird head tattoo. What are we thinking, Chris?
Looked cool, looked wicked. I like the idea that Zuko's kind of got that desperate, because it's going to hurt his ego to send someone else after him. He's wanted to be the one to capture the Avatar. He
also can't. He's also back in the bosom of the Fire Nation now. He can't just be like, "Hey, Dad, I'm off for a few months." Why? Don't worry about it.
He can't just disappear. So it makes sense. It's him it's what he thinks he wants, but maybe actually deep down it's not what he wants.
Right.
So love it for all that reasons. Excited to see how it plays out. Also love it because, of course, as they said last episode, in Fire Nation disguise, they haven't necessarily got someone after them. Now they do. Let's be honest, though, Dan, there is also an element of, do we have to have someone chasing them every year? Like, I mean, we've had scary figures go after these guys, like the people that were after Toph, turn into jokes. So there's a little part of me going, well, let's see how this plays out. But because of what's happened in the past, it's not the element of the series I'm most excited about.
No, I do think it gives a sense of threat, because I think because your issue is really you can't have it doesn't make sense for the Fire Lord himself to be doing what Azula was doing last year, chasing them about. No,
of course not.
He's the Fire Lord, so,
and they all think he's dead.
And if Azula and Zuko are back in the Fire Nation now, playing the part of Prince and Princess to the Fire Lord, then you do need a threat of some sort for the gang while they're getting their shit together. So it does, as a choice, it makes a lot of sense. But I agree with your concern that, like, haven't we already done this? Can't the threat just be that they could get caught at any minute? Can't that be the threat? Like, we don't need them to be necessarily chased. But I will say that as a little hint for you, Chris, I think they do something reasonably interesting with it.
Yeah, and I am excited to see it. And like I say, everyone else thinks he's dead. Like, they can't. This has to be the way to do it.
Right.
But it's not. So, am I looking forward to seeing how it unfolds? Yes. Did I end the episode thinking any more than that about it? Nah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What
about you? Can you remember how you felt? I imagine similar.
I feel like with season 3, I think I let a fair few episodes build up. I don't think I watched the first couple as they aired. I think when I sat down to watch season 3, I think I got to watch because I've got a distinct memory of like blasting through 5 or 6 episodes at once. So I think I didn't jump on season 3 until it was a handful of episodes in. And I think you mentioned at the beginning you wouldn't be surprised, or last week maybe, that you wouldn't be surprised if these 2 episodes had aired together, this one and last week's. But they did air a week apart, so the episodes were just airing once a week at this stage. So I don't remember having too much thought on it, because obviously with one of these kind of cliffhangers, this kind of thing, the answer is coming very soon. So you just, if you've got access to the episodes and you're not forced to stop and think about it and wait a week, then you tend not to speculate on those kind of cliffhangers, because you know how quickly you're going to get more context. So I don't remember having any major thoughts other than, potentially creepy new villain, like he doesn't say anything, he looks menacing. I guess it was more excitement for what his deal is than what his interaction with the gang will be.
Yes, yeah. What's the tattoo? What's the meaning? All of that sort of shit.
Yeah. What's his whole shtick? So yeah. We will see. Should we crack on with the triv? I'm going to give you some trivia.
Triv it up.
Okay, so very quickly, the music that played in the chapter page at the beginning, book 3, Fire, all that stuff. That's actually the same music that the Flamios play at the dance party, like a slightly altered version of it. When the episode started, it was like I did go, oh yeah. The history teacher teaches the Air Nomads as Air Nation, and mentions their army, revealing more of the Fire Nation's extensive propaganda. We've already kind of talked about that, but that's in the trivia. Thank you for that one. Barely trivia. I don't know why that's in here. The dance party and scene and basic plot of the episode, a free-spirited young man teaching self-expression to the youth of an oppressive town, is loosely based on the 1984 film Footloose. We've already talked about that too. Katara and Aang incorporate bending moves into their dances. The leg movements in Aang's Phoenix Flight dance resembles those of the Kazachok. Sorry to anyone Ukrainian or Russian, because it's apparently a traditional Ukrainian/Russian folk dance. And apologies that I've butchered the name of that. But there you go. The dance that Aang and Katara do is based on Ba Gua Zhang, a northern Shaolin. And Northern Shaolin, according to Sifu is it Kitsu? Kisu? This is the guy. So, okay, there you go. That kind of actually reaffirms my thoughts on that they must have animated these dances based on... Because this is Sifu Kisu. He's the guy that did all the martial arts for the show, or a lot of the martial arts for the show, on camera for the animators to follow.
That's what you're talking about
so
earlier,
if they base the dance that Aang and Katara do on this northern Shaolin style or whatever of martial arts, then that must be where that is. So yeah. So some influences from the Bagua style of airbenders include the sort of the circle walking motions, and the two performers mirroring each other. Avatar Extras, which is that version of the episode where they have little bubbles that give extra information and context, also mentioned that capoeira is an influence on this as well, which is that's fight dancing, isn't it? Capoeira. I don't know a lot about it, but it's been referenced in various TV shows and movies.
Nice. Cool.
So, Anji never once stated that Hyde was her boyfriend. Hyde said that. In fact, if you look, she's never once seen smiling while with him.
Yeah, she's got to get. You got to get out of that, girl. Get out of that relationship. It's bad news.
Is
he Dan?
Go on, sorry.
Dan.
Yeah.
Is he knobhead of the week? Because he's a dick to her.
Yeah.
He's very telltale-y. He's very, look, he's doing something wrong. He's jealous. Is he knobhead Hall of Fame?
I think he is knobhead Hall of Fame. I'm adding him.
Yeah, I think he is. Add him in. So who have we got now in knobhead Hall of Fame?
So we have the old man who dobbed Harrow in it from Imprisoned. He was the first member of the Knobhead Hall of Fame.
Still King Knobhead, by the way, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, you wanted to add the fucking child from the last season, so...
Yes, and I immediately learnt my mistake, so we're going to bring this up.
Oh, no, he's in here.
Did we put him in? Oh, fair enough. We are going to bring him up every time.
The old man who dobbed Harrow in it from Imprisoned. The waterbending master Paku for enforcing the patriarchy. From the episode Return to Omashu, we've got the fucking earthbending child Tom Tom. That fucking earthbending child Tom Tom. From Appa's Lost Days, we've got the circus guy who mistreated Appa, which I think is probably one of the more appropriate ones. And then obviously now we've added from the Headband, Hyde.
Yeah. I'm happy with that.
And I'm just going to put real prick.
Just general...
Just a real prick. There you go. I love that Tom Tom is still in here. That's amazing. Welcome to the Knobhead Hall of Fame, you innocent child that doesn't know what you're doing. But Chris had a real irrational hatred for you.
That child. I'm sorry, that child was a prick. I think we can. It does feel harsh if you want to take him out. What are the rules?
I'm happy
Can we take anyone out?
It amuses me every time. Your anger towards that child was amazing and continues to be amazing. So, after stealing disguises, each member of the team acquires an accessory to resemble what they normally wear. So Katara finds a Fire Nation necklace, Toph gets a hairpiece, and Sokka's wolf tail is replaced by sort of like a more Fire Nation one, and obviously Aang gets the headband to cover his arrow.
I did think we could have had her put the band round her neck over the necklace, as opposed to her taking the... Because she takes the necklace off, and then immediately afterwards, in like the next 2 seconds, she puts that thing round her neck. And I'm like, well, that could cover, because then there's the jeopardy of if that falls off, the necklace gets revealed.
Which I appreciate the dramatic tension of, but I guess practically she's not... Why would she take that risk?
Yeah, I suppose.
She's just like, I'll just hide it instead of having it rattling around under this one in case at one point it blows up or something like, or falls off, or if the gust catches the red thing and brings it slightly up on her neck, then the blue thing is going to be very visible, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fair.
The scene where all the kids wear their belts as headbands to confuse the guards into thinking they were Aang/Kuzon is similar to the historical event where 6,000 revolting slaves said they were all Spartacus in order to protect him from the Romans. So there you go.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. That was a really cool moment. I thought that was great. Agreed.
It
turns out we didn't talk about it because we got fuck all to say about it.
No, you're right. It's a cool moment. It's like there isn't much to say about it, which is why it probably didn't come up. But it's a good moment. I agree with your thoughts on it. I also, if we're just highlighting other little things, I do love as well when Aang makes Appa hide. He's like, "You've got the fanciest feet of them all." I thought that was really cute. And then the final piece of trivia, it is ironic how Mrs. Kwan bows to Aang as a way of showing him that they bow to their elders when Aang is actually 112 years old at this time.
Oh yeah, That's true.
So
I did like that. Well, you weren't there 100 years ago. That was good as well.
yeah, that was very like I know I've read the scripts sort of dialogue. I must admit I don't like dialogue like that, generally speaking, where it's like the character almost is so speaking directly to a wider meta thing that it's almost like, you know, they know what show they're in.
Yeah.
It's a little too close to the line of that for me. It's not like you were alive exactly 100 years ago, is it, Aang?
So does that take a shot? Does that mean then every time someone in Doctor Who goes, Doctor Who, do you go, oh, fucking hell?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Although they obviously did something very clever with that, with the whole question thing. I did think that was a very clever idea.
Back in Moffat's era. Back when there was a writer who was competent enough to understand the show and was writing it.
Yeah.
I remember those days. Come back, Russell T Davies. Anyway, question time. So, for those who don't know, if you're a Patreon, you get to ask us a question, which we answer at the end of each podcast. You can do that at patreon.com/nothingbutstatic. As little as $1 a month gets you episodes of this and our other podcast Rewind reviews 1 week before they're released on other platforms. And also, it gives you the pride and joy of knowing you're supporting our channel, but also it gives you the ability to ask these questions. So this week's listener question comes from a recurring listener on our podcast, a good friend Latty, who's been with us for a long time, since the Stephen University days, who asks if you could get one adaptation made from any medium to another, what would you get made and why? And he has specified, but not something we've made. Because obviously, I guess if we were actually given that choice, we'd be like, hey, remember that shitty web series we made? Can we make a movie now, please? So he means if you could take a thing and adapt it into another medium, what would you take and why? Now, I have mentioned...
I love that was specified. This isn't a career opportunity, guys, in this fictional question.
Yeah, exactly. A hypothetical. Don't turn it into a career opportunity. No, I think Latty was wise to do that, because that's probably what we would have done. So my answer to this, I'll get out of the way very quickly, because I've talked about it multiple times, and of all the places for it to come up, dear Lord, the fact that we've probably said the words Harry Potter on this podcast more than we've said the words Avatar is really depressing. But I have always said, prior to the more recent developments with J.K. Rowling, but I've always maintained that the best possible adaptation you're ever going to get to a television or film medium of Harry Potter is an animated show where you can do each season as 1 year at the school and really explore extra stuff that the books didn't get to cover, rather than turning it into a film series where you're restricted by time, or a live action series where you're restricted by budget. The story of the Harry Potter books, told really honestly and really like accurately, but with like, give me an episode just having some fun, like show me what Neville's up to, you know, around the school, would be my dream project to see done. If somebody was to do that and do that well, I'd be very, very happy.
I don't even think now, you know, in the worlds of, you know, Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings getting billions of dollars, I don't even think it needs to be animation anymore. I think you could do it, and someone will one day do it live action.
Maybe. I hope not. I don't think it will be good.
It's amazing it's not happened already, and without pouring in on J.K. Rowling, it sort of feels like
it might not now.
It just feels, well, there's that side of things, but also she seems to be very, quite fairly, it's her creation, but seems to be real. She doesn't seem to want to give it to other people's interpretations. Do you know what I mean? And I know the films were, but it feels like the films are the films, and that's the alternative interpretation we're getting. You know, I don't know how. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but
she's not been quick to relinquish control.
Yeah.
She's still the gatekeeper of the world, whereas, you know, George Lucas, who did the same thing for many years, has now finally, in recent years, obviously had to give up that control. You know, with Star Wars. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Anyway, do a shot. I talked about Harry Potter, but it's the answer to the question, honestly. How about yourself, Chris?
The show I'd work on if I could work on any show would be Doctor Who, but that's not the question.
No, if you could get, I mean, it doesn't even specify we're working on it. It says if you could get one adaptation made from any medium to another, what would you get made and why? It doesn't even mean by us. So I'm not even saying I should be the one to write this animated Harry Potter show. That's just the dream project I would like to see it go into existence.
There's a book by Tom and Giovanna Fletcher that I think it feels like it wasn't big enough to be adapted into a TV show, called Eve of Man, which is basically about the last woman on Earth, basically. Which, when you read it, feels very episodic in the way it's structured and stuff. And I remember enjoying. Having said that, I haven't rushed to the sequel. I would love to see. I almost don't know how you could do it now, because I think, the Marvel movies have done it, and all superhero movies now need a new take. But I would love to see a Power Rangers movie that was kind of done that way. I think almost the thing with the if I could see a Power Rangers movie, I'd be tempted to see the Angel Grove movie. I think that's a new take that we've not seen in a superhero film. What happens to the town? So don't do Origins, don't do all of that stuff. Do the story of a town that has become a hotspot for alien invasions and alien fights. And what does that mean for the town? Have people fled the town? Has the town become, looked on differently by the rest of the country, because of all this activity that keeps happening there? I think an interesting Power Rangers take could be, look, the Power Rangers are a thing, and, in the original show, they're seen as heroes, but actually, is the town turning on them? Because it's like, well, clearly the Power Rangers are here. If the Power Rangers were somewhere else, would that be the town that's constantly destroyed and attacked? Yeah. What do these alien fights mean for the people living in that town? I think is an interesting take you could do with Power Rangers. I think you found something really interesting. I think it's something that's it's not been done for Power Rangers, but it has been done in comic form for the Marvel universe. There's a series from the 90s called Marvels, just Marvels, and it's basically all the big events, the big world-changing fights that have happened across the Marvel comic book universe, but from the perspective of people on the street. So it's street level, the people who live within the Marvel universe having their lives, upturned by the shit happening around them. Slight sort of, mild spoilers for Hawkeye, which will have been out for quite a while now. But the first episode of the Hawkeye shows us a sort of street level view of the events of the original 2012 Avengers. It was a whole series like that. That would make a really interesting movie, actually, to do, whether for Power Rangers or whether for the Marvel universe. Like an idea of doing a street level superhero film where your perspective isn't from the perspective of the superheroes, but the poor people living in the cities these superheroes and supervillains are fighting within. It's a good idea. I'd definitely go see one of those. And then the other obvious one, which I think we have talked about in some form or another before, but Animals. A proper almost body horror, because I remember as a kid,
would you do a movie or a TV series? I'm very curious as to your answer to that question, because that changes my feeling. Because I don't think I want to see a movie.
No, a TV series, yeah. And I don't know how far you'd go, because I remember even as we were kids, and it wasn't me making the point. It was someone else who I know that was reading the books, and I was like, I think the Animals TV show is all right, and they were like, nah, they'd never be able to do the Animals TV show it would need to be. And I was like, what's that then? And they were like, the true body horror of turning into the animals. Like, they're superheroes, but actually the notion that to become like the heroes, their bodies and bones have to, like in the books, it's described as bones snapping and breaking and morphing, and the kind of the horror of that. And I think now you could do that now as a TV show. You'd
almost want to do it as like a CW style, like adult, like teen drama, like rather than a maybe not with that tone necessarily, but like you'd almost be looking at that market rather than the kids show, which is what the original was.
Although interestingly, even though it would all obviously be CGI, no animals would actually be harmed. Yeah. Could that show be made? Because essentially, it's
all CGI animals right about.
It's animals. One, it would be expensive, but two, would it face criticism? The notion of using animals to fight for us.
Yeah,
interesting. I don't know. I think those are some answers.
Yeah, those are good answers, Chris. I will say, looking at this question, I really would have said there was absolutely no possible way that a question about adapting one piece of storytelling medium into another, that you'd somehow find a way to squeeze McFly into it. But gotta say, impressed.
It's very YA, but that book is, if you're into YA fiction, I think my memory of that book, I read it a few years ago.
Because I read a book, Even Man, I'm like, oh, that's interesting, and I start Googling it, and as I'm typing it in, I stop at of, because you then say Giovanna Fletcher and Tom Fletcher, and I went, okay, I'm not interested in this at all.
You might enjoy it. It's like I say, I read it on holiday, like literally in an abroad sunshine.
Would you, honest answers, Chris? Would you have read that book if it hadn't been written by those people?
No, but that's not a. Do you know what I mean? Would you have read the Man Who Died Twice if it hadn't been written by Richard Osman?
No, absolutely. I'm not dismissing that as a reason you came across it, but my point is, that my interest in it wanes a little when I see who wrote it.
Right, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, good discussion.
So there you go. Thanks, everyone.
I feel like there are other answers out there, but it's a really fascinating question. But yeah.
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you, Lati, as always. We got more questions in the bank, but if you want to head over to the Patreon and leave one yourself, you can. It's again as little as $1 a month. But our Patreon system is that it's flat in terms of it's not $1 gets you this, $5 gets you this, $10 a month gets you this. It's none of that, because we always felt like, people should give whatever they're comfortable giving, and shouldn't, like, the rewards shouldn't be like price locked. So basically, to get access to our Patreon, which gives you the episodes a week early and the chance to ask a question we'll answer on the podcast, it is purely like just for everyone. So as little as $1 a month, you can support with more if you can. I always say, and I borrow this from the Weekly Planet, but they always say, whatever you can afford, whatever amount of money you wouldn't miss if it fell out of your pocket is the right amount. Completely. Like, never any more. And it's so funny, it's so sweet. People sometimes have to cancel, and they go, oh, I'm so sorry, financial... And I'm just like, no, the fact that you even thought about giving to support our dinky little podcast is amazing. So absolutely no one ever needs to apologise for cancelling, like, ever. And it's amazing how often I see that, even though I'm just like, no need. So yeah, thank you, everyone, for listening and supporting in all the ways that you do. Obviously, you can get in touch with us if you have any thoughts on anything we've said in this episode, either down in the YouTube comments on YouTube for this video, or you can get us a mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk, or I'm on Twitter at Dan Doolan. Chris is on Twitter at cbillingham with 2 M's, which he'd change except for the fact we've done nearly 10 years of worth of podcasts where we quote that as his Twitter handle. And if he changed it now, it'd be all those hundreds of people who tweet you every week would be lost.
Yeah, I mean, that is the thing, isn't it? I mean, I could definitely get away with it, but oh well.
So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We do
even if someone like desperately wanted to get hold of me, and that was what they knew as the only way, they could just tweet you and be like, this is for Chris. Like, maybe I should change it. But you know what, Dan? If I changed it, I wouldn't use Twitter anymore. So.
You don't use Twitter now.
I wouldn't use it any more than I already do.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Yeah, which is basically never.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in a week. Oh, I don't think. Do I know the name of the next episode? Oh, I do. Yes, it's a good one. Okay, so thank you everyone for listening. As always, I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham,
and we'll speak to you next time when we sit down to discuss The Painted Lady.